Hi, I'm Big Chocolate, also known as Cameron Argon, also known as Cameron. Welcome to CamEveryDay. I just finished a book last night, and I figured I'd take some time to talk about reading and some of my favorite books from last year. I've made a habit of reading or picking up reading throughout last year. It mainly started when I was traveling in airplanes and stuff. I got sick of listening to stuff in earbuds, especially when I was flying. The pressure changing and no matter what I was listening to, music or podcasts, it just became too much, especially listening to music every other waking moment of my life. So I figured I'd pick up reading again. I used to like to read a lot. I was into the Kindles. I was actually really into the Kindles. Kindles are a great way to read. They have some really nice features like a built-in dictionary and they'll give you descriptions of characters and when they appear in the story. And if you're going the Kindle route, I'd recommend the Kindle Paperwhite. It's lightweight, it stays charged for weeks, and it was super easy to read on. It didn't have like a phone type of display. It was pleasant, it was easy, it was nice. But this year I got into paper books. I asked my sister to give me some books or recommend me some books, one of which is in my pile of books I'm going to recommend. Another one she gave me is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a classic. And it was nice because I've seen the movie, so I was able to picture some of the characters, but also, picture the literary characters in my mind as well and kind of reference both. Great book, great movie. The book I finished last night is this one right here. It's called Haunted by Heather Graham. It's a nice book for me to talk about now because I just perfected my nighttime reading. And I have my sister got me, the sister who recommended me the books and whatnot, she didn't recommend me Haunted. She got me a night light for reading, because I used to have these lights and I'd dim them, and I just would read in a dimmed room, and that was fine, but using the night light, the little attachment for your book, really is an engulfing feeling when you're reading. It's just the book is the only, especially in a dark room, it's the only illuminating part of the book. When I first got a Kindle, that was how I liked to read as well, was at night in the dark. And I remember my first book I read on it was The Shining, which is a fantastic book if you've never read it. And it was the first book where I was really subtranced into horror through literature. I don't want to spoil anything for that book because the part that really got me going with the frills and the chills was one of my favorite moments, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but about 100 to maybe 200 pages in the book, it's all this build up, and then this one event happens, and it's so bone-chilling, and you just can't help but take your eyes off the page, or the screen in my case. And I'll never forget it. It was I read it. It was my first year living alone in a house in Seattle, and I loved it. I loved the sheer terror that I got from it. It wasn't like I couldn't sleep afterwards. It just was an experience. Something about literature is really, I think, the ultimate media to enjoy. And it may not have a lot of the frills and aesthetics that film has, but there's something about it, about reading, about how the words just come off into your mind and how the pictures kind of develop and how dialogue flows and how good your mind is at translating these thoughts. It's a unique experience. So I'll talk about this book, which is just the book I finished reading, and then I want to talk about the books I read this year that I want to recommend or just say I liked. This book I got at a book fair. I thought it was going to be just a good haunted story. The last book I read was an autobiography, so I figured I'd switch it up. Because there's a couple dry dietary books I've been reading too, like The Raw Milk Revolution, and I want to get into human degeneration and nutrition. So I thought this would be a nice, fun little ride. And honestly, after finishing it, I want to read more like it because it just was so fun. The last half of it just flew by. And when it ended, when I was getting close to the end, I was definitely like, how are they going to end this? Like, I definitely feel like they could have kept going another 100 pages or whatever. But it ended great. It had a great ending. Caught me off guard. I knew it was going to catch me off guard because I thought there could be easily another 200 pages, and I had about 15, 30 pages to go. But it's about a ghost story and a psychic and a sheriff that owns this old house, and they kind of fall in love. And I don't want to spoil anything about it. You could read the description. I don't want to spend too much time. Well, I guess I will. When does a gift become a curse? Matt Stone doesn't believe in ghosts, but there are those who are convinced his home, an historic Virginia estate that dates back to the Revolutionary War, is haunted. Pressured to get the truth about strange happenings at Medley House, he agrees to let Harrison Investigations explore the house. But what he isn't ready for is beautiful, intriguing Darcy Tremaine. And so she kind of comes into the scene, and they kind of butt heads continuously, but there's a bunch of romance that goes on. And that's something that kind of caught me off. Was I figured there was going to be some kind of romance, but I didn't expect it to go down like it did. It was very erotic. It wasn't erotic in like the descriptive, smutty way that those books at the grocery store, the ones that your grandma reads. I don't think there was that descriptive as that. Like you open that up and you read a couple pages out of that, and you're like, what the hell is this? This was more, it was, literary eroticism, and it was, kind of she paints the picture well when the romance goes down, but it caught me off guard when it first happened. I was like, what the hell am I reading? But it's a great ghost story. It was a very entertaining book. I love the characters. The haunts were good. I'm into ghosts and stuff myself, so it was nice. And I'm sad it's over. I had a very nice ending with it last night. I finished my book and I was like, this is so great. Closed it. Laid there for a little while. Soaked up kind of what I completed and what I finished. And I went to bed. The first book I'm going to recommend is one of the books that my sister Phoebe recommended to me. It's called Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. It seems like a book that everyone would know because everyone knows the movie, but it really was an awesome book. He's kind of like a science type writer, but all the science in the book is totally made up. So when you're reading it, you really feel like you know a lot about dinosaurs based off what he's saying and based off what's happening in the book. But it's kind of all made up. I mean, I don't know. It's been a while since I've read it, but there's all these connections to birds that are like dinosaurs and stuff. And by the end of it, you think you know everything about dinosaurs. It's kind of funny. But it was an entertaining book. Definitely a lot scarier than the movie. So I recommend it. I read through it really quickly. It's a classic book, classic read. I think a lot of people probably overlook this book when picking a book to read. So if you're trying to get into reading and you want just like a nice action book, this is an absolute classic. The next book I'm going to pick is Kurt Vonnegut's Piano Player. Oh, my bad. Player Piano. I always do that with this book. Now, this book is unlike any other book I've read in my life. This book by Kurt Vonnegut is pure magic. I wanted to be in the best place I was every time I wanted to read it. so I can get the most out of it. Every page is just kind of like a literary treat. It's almost like you're eating the best feast of your life, and it just keeps going the entire book. The story is, I don't want to say it's dry, but there is some dryness to it. But the way it's written is so, I don't know, it's hard for me to find the words for, I guess I would relate to, eating. It's a treat. It's a literary treat. I would recommend this to anyone who hasn't read any Kurt Vonnegut and get an experience with this type of writing, this high-level type of writing. This guy truly has a gift. My sister wrote a quote in it, too. This is actually a gift she gave to me 2014 for Christmas. "Hello, babies. Welcome to Earth. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter. On the outside, babies, you've got 100 years here. There's only one rule that I know of, babies. God damn it, you've got to be kind." It's a pretty good quote. It always resonates with me in some type of way. So I'll recommend that out to any of my avid readers who want to expand their palettes, their library, what they've read. The other book I read this year that I'm going to recommend, I read, I should have counted before this video. I want to say it's close to maybe 12 books this year, maybe a little more. One of them I don't have with my stack, and I'd probably talk about it next, or I'll talk about it after this since I'm already holding this one. This one is by Dean Koontz. This is the second Dean Koontz book I read this year, and I think it's maybe the third Dean Koontz book I've read in my life. It's called Watchers, and I didn't know it was one of his classics until I finished it, because there's an afterword where he talks about his experience with the book and the post-success he's had and how people kind of react to him about this book and how often people talk about it. I didn't know any of that stuff going in. It's a great book about a depressed young man who finds this dog and finds life, and there's mystery and monsters and detective work and violence and cliffhangers constantly, and there's a lot of different elements in this book. There's a lot of different character lines, storylines, different characters, and how they all kind of intermingle. You're always curious about how these paths are going to cross, and there's some interesting elements. Like there's a dog, and there's like a devil dog. It's not even a dog. It's like a cross between a wolf and a baboon, and it's intelligent. It's an interesting book. I guess you'd call it science fiction or nonfiction, right? No, fiction. Listen to this guy. Reviewing books, calling fiction nonfiction. It's my first video review, though, at the new set, the new CamEveryDay set. Hope you like it. Remember my last video? Said I used to just put my stuff here. I decided it was a great place to make videos. And look what we have for ourselves now. A wonderful new video set location. This is just my warm-up video to get this location kind of zoomed in. I finished that book last night. Figured it'd be a good idea to tell y'all about these books. So here I am, and here you are. The other book that is not in my possession that I'll talk about next is A Wild Sheep Chase. And it's by this Japanese author who I'm not even going to pretend to know how to pronounce at the moment. I tried looking for it. My roommate was reading it after me. I couldn't find it. Can't show you the cover. But it takes place in Japan, and it's kind of a mystery book as well. It's about this guy who's kind of beat down. He's not really beat down. He just kind of has a smug personality. He's kind of like a Holden Caulfield type character, like from Catcher in the Rye. That's a good parallel. And he goes on this wacky adventure that he's kind of drawn into by this weird coincidental thing that he does. And it's a wonderful book. It was a great read. It was addicting to read. It was written really, really well. I loved pretty much everything about it. when it was over, I was bummed, but it was such a great book. I was happy to have it on my belt. It's one of those books where will probably read again. Out of these books, the Kurt Vonnegut Player Piano, I will probably read again because it's at some point in my life. I mean, any of these I could probably reread at some point in my life, but Player Piano, Haunted, I don't think I would reread again. Maybe I would. I don't know. But where a wild sheep chase, I would 100% read that again. So, I think that's saying something. Now, my favorite book I read this year, and one of my favorite books I've read in my entire life. I'm 28 years old now. I wish I read this 10 years ago. If you're brand new, and for some reason you're stumbling on this video, I've been a musician for the last 10 years. Producer, DJ, recording artist, tons of stuff. And I really wish I read this earlier. Not because it taught me a lot of lessons that I didn't have to do the hard work to learn. Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis. Anthony Kiedis is the singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And this book takes place from when he was born, roughly, to pretty much around Californication. And it is such an addicting read. And that's a funny way to put it because he was battling drug addiction on and off throughout these years. And it's so interesting to hear his perspective on all this through his journeys and his struggles and his triumphs. And this book is just like one of the Bibles of rock and roll, I feel. Anyone who's interested in rock and roll or in any of the things that come along with rock and roll, I think this is a very important book to read. I've always been a big fan of the spirit of rock and roll, and I've always incorporated that spirit into a lot of my life, whether it be music or my outlook on certain things. Rock and roll has been a spirit that I not even try to, I just acknowledge it and I let it burn. There's so many times where it's rock and roll, and you just gotta do what you gotta do. One thing I never got into was drugs, especially hard drugs like Anthony was into. So it's really awesome to kind of go read through that whole perspective. And it's filled with great pictures. I got the hardcover. It's got a great spacing and everything. I highly, highly recommend this book to anyone who's into music. If you're not into the Red Hot Chili Peppers, doesn't matter, still get this. This is actually, when I was reading this, every time I would cross and read through it, because it's in chronological, I would read through an album or an album section of the band, and I would take a little break and I would listen to that album. I might take a day off of reading the book and just listen to the album. So it was kind of interactive for me in a couple different ways. But man, this is a great book. One of the big reasons I've been starting to read is I've just been trying to better my life in a lot of ways. I've been trying to improve my speech. I've been trying to improve my writing, and I've been trying to improve my comprehension, really. Now, I think comprehension I probably was the best at. I've always been a strong reader. But when I was getting ready to do the Disfiguring the Goddess stuff, I really wanted to freshen up on my writing skills. I knew the best way to do that would be to start reading. And I was saying earlier, I've never had like a big drug problem, but was a pretty frequent user of cannabis for not my whole life, but I would say maybe the past 5 years, fluctuating around depending on what was going on in my life. But I could never read stoned. Those two things don't go together. I've heard about other people who love the combo, but to me it really wasn't a combo that worked out for me at all. So I actually stopped consuming the wonderful little plant because I wanted to read and better my life. And I'm not trying to dog on marijuana at all. I think it's a pretty great thing. I think it's a good thing for most people. I think most people should try to learn about it in some type of personal way at one point in their life. I think it's a lot less harmful than other things you could do, like alcohol. And I think it could do some good things for you, but I also think it could do a lot of bad things for you as well. I think it could make you comfortable in some bad ways. I think it could let you cope with things, which might sound like a good thing, but I really think it's kind of a bad thing, because you should kind of learn to cope with your issues through action and not a coping mechanism. I'm not trying to dog on anyone who loves those methods or anything, no disrespect at all. I'm just saying, for my own life, I'm glad I had a little experience with it. It was great as a musician for a while, because my whole life I was always a pretty clean-cut person. I never drank, I never smoked, and when I was young or anything. And then I had like my normal, I would say, experiences with alcohol or whatever when I was 20 and whatnot. And eventually, when I was living on my own at some year, I got into, I should tell my cannabis story another day. But I got into the Devil's Lettuce, and I thought it was great. It was cool because I was already established musician at that time, so it was kind of neat to bring that into the workflow in various ways. And I have all kinds of stories about how I experimented with it and how it affected certain projects and stuff, for better and for worse. I should talk about that later too. But I ran my course with it, and I'm pretty much over it. I mean, I could still see some places in my life where it would be nice, but right now, not right now. If you watch my New Year's resolution video, I'm actually committing to a year of sobriety. I'm going to include coffee, alcohol, and weed. I want to include, and everything else. I want to include sunglasses as well, because sunglasses are a thing that I've really kind of coped with as well. That's probably another good video I should talk about, but I'll freshen up on it right here. I feel like I was hiding myself from other people a lot using sunglasses. I would wear them pretty much all the time, and especially outside, but even inside, because I just didn't want to deal with looking at people or people looking at me. And I have other reasons for blaming that stuff on other things, but that's really not what this video is about. But I'm going to try and really cut down my use of sunglasses. I'm going to Florida at the end of the month for some dates. If anyone's interested, I have the dates on my Facebook page, Big Chocolate Official. I'm going to Tallahassee, Tampa, and Orlando, and I'm also going to Birmingham, Alabama on this trip. And I might bring my sunglasses because just to, the airport or something. But I'm also going to try and to really count down the time I wear sunglasses. I actually have all my pairs of sunglasses in my closet right now, which is fun. I have 4 pairs of pretty nice sunglasses. I've only lost 2 sunglasses in the last 10 years. And one of them was on New Year's last year. I still don't know how I lost them. It was their bitchin' set of soles that fell in my jacket pocket somewhere. Super lame. And then the other one was my first pair of Ray-Bans that I lost on a roller coaster, which sucked. So I've also lost another pair of Ray-Bans because I gave them to a cousin because I felt bad she didn't have sunglasses, and I never saw them again. But that's kind of how things go. When you give someone sunglasses, let them borrow sunglasses, you should be expected to never give them back. The same thing goes with a book. If you let someone borrow a book, you better be ready to never see that book again, because that's a lot of times how that goes. I've honestly got all my books back that I've ever let people borrow, which is a nice thing, but just putting that out there. This is something I plan on doing more book reviews, where I sit down and I talk about some of the books I read, and I try not to call them all racist. I really like this setup. I hope to make more consistent videos here. I've been looking for kind of an outlet with CamEveryDay to make more content without particularly going out and doing stuff in the world vlog style. I think some type of talk, some type of discussion, me bringing up points, me talking about certain topics, me talking about myself, sharing things about my life, sharing things about my experiences. I could definitely get a lot out of that in this type of setting, where before it was kind of a spur of the moment thing where I was walking around my house pointing the camera at me. So I just want to say thanks for watching. I really appreciate it if you've made it this far. And yeah, happy 2019, and here's to more content and more Cameron Argon in your life, more big chocolate in your soul, and all that good stuff. So till next time, when we get to the Cameron couch, the chocolate pad,